We just finished another workshop called Finding the Coaching Moments in Everyday Conversations. And the practice that we introduced in today's session was the conversation dance. And we've often used this as a metaphor, but we haven't actually provided it as a practice. Today, we used it as a practice. And the practice was that we would start in our conversation dance in our coaching shoes. And then if it deviated from that because we had some sort of spark of inspiration to either give some advice or share some mentoring or counseling or information sharing, whatever that expertise was, once we dipped out of it, we would bring it back with a question. So we gave a series of questions, regardless of the expertise that you shared, to bring it back, to give it to the coachee, to allow them to lead the dance or to continue leading the dance. And we would do so in a way that would only allow, we were trying to reinforce, I guess, that the coachee should be speaking or reflecting or thinking about things 80% of the time, with only 20% of time for the coach to be dropping in that nugget. So, uh, so it kind of focused everybody to be in their coaching shoes the majority of the time and just dip out when it made sense, if it made sense, to provide that expertise. Um, and we also tried via the conversation coaching question starter kit is that if we followed that structure, they would stay in relationship long enough to help get clarity and focus for the coachee before giving that that piece of knowledge that you maybe had for them. And then ideally hand it back to them to take over and see what they wanted to do with it.
So the play field, when we got into the practice, was we're still following the conversation model. As Ian has pointed out, we gave them kind of like, please start in relationship where you listen, ask questions so they can, determine what they want to get out of the conversation, what success would look like. And then, as Ian said, they wanted to play in the different shoes if they felt it would be a useful. Their gut was saying, I think this piece of advice or this information would help them in possibilities or help them get some more clarity, to give that and then jump back into the shoes. And then ultimately at the end, Ian, giving them back in the conversation for action what they wanted their next steps to be. So that continuation of including all three conversations. What was interesting, and I loved it in the debrief, Ian, was we had some brand new people coming in today that hadn't met us or been part of our work yet, which was so cool to see. And we had some of our veterans there who have been following us for a long time. And the kind of the learning for them was that those questions, the ones that you talked about, that starter kit really supported them in just staying in the coaching shoes and the flow. The other thing it did is it helped them stay in relationship. We have the saying, you got to slow down to speed up. So really interesting that a couple people said that importance. Their walk away was that relationship conversation. We often skip into that action too soon. So that learning continues to see that how that flow supports people getting to action quicker.
Yeah. And that the 80-20 rule supported them in that conversation as well. Just that little reminder that I shouldn't be talking most of this time, I think was really helpful just and I think it was just more like a drop in, like, hey, just remember, let's not talk too much. And that helped. The other thing that I noticed, because I actually got coached this time, was that regardless of how skilled the person was in coaching, it didn't really matter if they were in tune with you. And I think the intuition of those who are showing up right now is really high, and they're trusting their gut. And even though the questions are maybe leading or closed or whatever advice disguised as a question, they're on target.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I had those questions asked of me, they were still right there. So it just shows to me that we all have it inside of ourselves when we trust ourselves.
I think we've said this numerous times. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I really see the relaxation. And that was the other thing to close it down. People found it easy to learn. This wasn't too big. It was comfortable, and it was really the relationship building with strangers was quite quick because of that. If they felt comfortable practicing together.
And I think it was helpful to because this is the first time we've let them color outside the lines and do things that we normally say, you can't do this, tuck it away in the locker. We allowed them to do it this time, but when it makes sense to do. And we even had somebody say it was so uncomfortable to not have my shoes on, my coaching shoes. But maybe that was the conversation that needed to happen in that conversation. So it's knowing when and being able to dance between the conversations by being able to give the lead back when it makes sense.
Yeah, that was a muscle development today. Going into maybe those other shoes, but make the question to bring you back in the coaching shoes, dropping it in and seeing how it works for them versus hanging on to it. It's very cool to see.
Awesome. All right, that's our wrap up for this workshop. Hopefully, we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Take care.